A carefully coordinated process is ongoing to transfer power from the outgoing administration of U.S. President Joe Biden to President-elect Donald Trump. Cancer patients in Zimbabwe urge authorities to install life-saving cancer equipment to provide radiotherapy. And authorities in Sierra Leone launch an Ebola vaccination campaign targeting at least 5,000 health workers. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is preparing to take office, and a carefully coordinated process is underway to transfer power from the outgoing administration to the new one. VOA Salem Solomon has the details.
I appreciate very much a transition that's so smooth. It'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
A peaceful transfer of power, an enduring tradition, a solemn promise, and an important component of American democracy. After a U.S. president is elected, there is a flurry of activity before he or she is sworn in. 76 days from the election to inauguration may sound like plenty of time, but the transition from one administration to the next is anything but simple, says Michael Shurkin, who had served on the National Security Council and is now the Global Programs Director at 14 North Strategies, a business advisory firm.
We want to make sure that the president succeeds, so if they want to review the policy, we're going to help them do that by telling them what we know and explaining to them what's going on.
The president-elect doesn't officially take office until January 20th, but planning must begin much earlier, says Valerie Smith-Boyd with the Center for Presidential Transition.
So it is a tremendously large task, and the first thing that our organization has done is try to encourage presidential candidates to start that planning process in the spring of an election year. Of course, they have a big focus on winning the election, but they also need to establish a separate organization that is looking at how to vet hundreds of thousands of resumes to select exactly the right people to convert their policy promises into action.
Filling government positions is no small task. Many of the positions require Senate confirmation, while others must be vetted for classified security clearance, creating a delicate time, Boyd says.
We do see times of transition as a period of vulnerability for the nation because political appointees, senior leaders are leaving one administration. There may be delays in new people coming on board. And of course, that can create some challenges in communication or understanding roles and responsibilities.
The U.S. has a long-standing tradition of peaceful power transitions dating back to the first in 1797 when George Washington handed the presidency to John Adams. At the heart of successful transfer of power, Boyd says, is clear and effective communication.
So a peaceful transfer of power at its best looks like an incoming and outgoing team sharing information and working closely together to protect the country and the world from very serious risks.
Shurkin emphasizes that ultimately a smooth-running democracy is more important than who wins the election.
For a democracy to function, everybody has to, at a certain level, understand that as long as the system works, the system is sort of more important than they are. So the health of the system is more important than whether or not your guy won or lost the election. And I think that has historically been an important reason why American democracy has been so stable and so relatively successful.
As the nation prepares for the next presidential inauguration, the transition process is a reminder of the people behind the scenes who make democracy work. Salem Solomon, VOA News, Washington.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is reportedly set on nominating former Representative Matt Gaetz as his Attorney General, despite facing significant opposition from Democrats and some Republicans. Several Republican senators may challenge Trump's choices for his cabinet, particularly Gaetz and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as his choice to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. For more, let's go live to Capitol Hill, where VOA's Paul Ndiho is standing by. Paul, new reports suggest President Trump is sticking to his nominations for cabinet positions. What more can you tell us?
That's correct, Esther. Politics in most cases extends beyond elections. What we are seeing is Trump going behind the scenes, calling some of these senators who are on the committee that is supposed to vet and vote for his nominees, calling them to say, hey, frankly, I want my people in there, and you are going to help me push them forward. Until that happens, it remains to be seen, but you have some of the cabinet nominees who have been nominated by Trump raising a lot of headlines out here in Washington, D.C., simply because some of them are shrouded in controversies. But that remains to be seen how the Senate votes for some of these nominees.
President-elect Trump is actually putting his political and social capital on some of these nominations we're talking about. What are you learning from the Hill?
Interesting question, Esther. When I was a young student, my professor used to say that success breeds so many fathers and failure is an orphan. And in the American context today, there is no person who has more social or political capital than President Donald Trump. So he's going to use that leverage really to push forward his cabinet nominees. It's increasingly looking that he's going to get at least some people who are pushing back, but more likely than not, all his cabinet nominees will go through, because he's going to have control of Congress, control of the Senate. So I don't see why some of these people are going to pushing back, but ultimately I think he's going to win, have all his nominees come through the vetting process.
Definitely a very new kind of push here, Paul. But let's go to some very kind of unusual statement where we are talking here about a recess appointments. How can Trump use them to fill his cabinet?
Great question. So the Constitution guarantees the president, or grants the President of the United States that ability to appoint anybody to his cabinet, or to run some of these government agencies through recess appointment. Until recently, it was used previously by different presidents. For example, President Bill Clinton used recess appointments to appoint 139. George W. Bush used the recess appointment to appoint 171. Obama had 32 recess appointments, but none of them were cabinet positions. So it's not going to set a precedent. Trump is not going to be the first person to do it. Other people have done it. But until recently, the Supreme Court tried to minimize those powers. So it's more likely that he will go the route of using the Senate confirmation process.
Paul, very well said. I imagine that he is going to have, of course, as you say, the control of the House as well as the Senate. That makes it a bit easy to lead the country. VOA's Paul Ndiho reporting live from Capitol Hill. As President-elect Donald Trump prepares to return to the White House in January, some state governors from the opposition Democratic Party are preparing to defend their state's progressive policies. Matt Debo reports from western U.S. state of California.
Isn't it nice to win?
As President-elect Donald Trump prepares to take power with Republican majorities in both houses of Congress, some Democratic governors want to limit his impact on their states.
If you try to harm New Yorkers or roll back their rights, I will fight you every step of the way.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul and the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, were quick to react.
You come for my people, you come through me.
We are calling and have called for an emergency special session of our state legislature, firmly focused on the values we hold dear, that I think are universal values, that are American values.
That's California Governor Gavin Newsom calling a special session of the state assembly to prepare for what his office says is, quote, an incoming federal administration that has threatened the state on multiple fronts. Following his win, Trump posted on his Truth Social that Newsom is, quote, trying to kill our nation's beautiful California.
The state of California is a mess.
Trump frequently says the state's progressive policies contribute to crime, homelessness, and unauthorized immigration.
The great state of California will be filing a lawsuit today.
During the first Trump presidency, California sued the administration over 100 times, successfully defending state immigration policies, vehicle emission standards, and access to health care. Speaking last week near San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge, California Attorney General Rob Bonta said his team plans to begin filing litigation as soon as Trump takes office.
Mr. Trump repeatedly overstepped his authority between 2016 and 2020. There's no reason to think he won't do it again. We checked him and we stopped him and we pushed him back into his box when he tried to step out of it.
On a Los Angeles campaign stop in September, Trump bashed California's leaders and their management of state resources.
I'm going to give you safety, I'm going to give you a great border, and I'm going to give you more water than almost anybody has.
California spent over $41 million defending laws and policies during the first Trump presidency, according to the nonprofit Cal Matters. When state legislators convene in December, Democratic leaders say they will be voting on emergency funding to block the incoming Trump administration from deporting immigrants, limiting reproductive and civil rights, and rolling back environmental regulations in America's most populous state. Matt Dibble, VOA News, Oakland, California.
Cancer patients and advocates in Zimbabwe are urging authorities to ensure cancer centers have life-saving equipment needed to properly treat patients. Some patients say public hospitals do not have working machines to provide radiotherapy. Columbus Mavunga reports from Harare.
Fungai Munyeza, who lives in Zimbabwean capital Harare, says she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017. Munyeza says Zimbabwe's public hospitals did not have the equipment to treat her, and care in a private hospital was too expensive. So she sought treatment in South Africa, where she was declared cancer-free.
Because if I didn't have money, I would be gone. I would be gone because the treatment is expensive. So I would say my survival is mostly on my positivity and also on the types of regimes that I received.
The Zimbabwe National Cancer Registry's latest report issued in October says of the more than 7,000 new cancer cases reported each year in 2018 and 2019, 1,000 patients died of the disease.
In terms of cancer deaths, the leading causes of mortality, according to the reports, are cervix. So cervix was by far the leading cause of a cancer. This was followed by prostate, and then esophagus, then breast and liver.
The non-profit group, the Cancer Association of Zimbabwe, says most types of cancer are curable, but the report suggests patients are not getting treatment until the cancer has reached its final stages. Lovemore Makurirofa with the Cancer Association of Zimbabwe is calling on the government to do more to stem the rate of cancer deaths.
Also need a sustainable funding mechanism, a domestic funding mechanism that is very sustainable, which will make sure that cancer programs are implemented extensively in the same way HIV and AIDS activities are being implemented.
Munyeza says cancer treatment in private hospitals is more expensive than seeking it abroad. She says cancer patients end up going abroad for treatment if they do not have funds to seek medication in private hospitals. For those who cannot afford to seek treatment elsewhere, Munyeza says the outlook is grim.
Remember, in Zimbabwe, there are only 2 radiotherapy machines, and of the 2 radiotherapy machines, they are all down at the moment, one in Blue and one in Harare.
In a brief statement to VOA on Monday, the Zimbabwean Health Ministry said the radiotherapy centers in Zimbabwe are being resuscitated and will be functional soon. Muturi Ncube, Zimbabwe's finance minister, last year introduced sugar tax to raise funds to improve services for cancer patients. So far, that revenue has not yet been distributed for cancer treatment services. Meanwhile, Munyeza says she plans to travel to India for more testing to ensure she remains cancer-free. Columbus Mavunga, VOA News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Still to come, what were the lessons learned from an Ebola outbreak in West Africa? We'll be right back with the answer.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, Somaliland opposition leader Abdi Rahman Siru defeated incumbent President Musa Bihi Abdi in the November 13 elections with 64% of the vote. Somaliland declared independence from Somalia in 1991 but lacks international recognition. A recent memorandum of understanding with Ethiopia might help Somaliland gain recognition, but this is causing anger with the Mogadishu government. How will the new president navigate this complex political situation? Join me, Peter Clote, for an in-depth discussion on Somaliland and the tension building in the Horn of Africa.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
In other news, the Somaliland Electoral Commission announced Tuesday that opposition leader Abdirahman Mohamed Abdullahi defeated incumbent Musa Bihi Abdi for the presidency of the breakaway region located in the Horn of Africa. Independent observers described the election as peaceful. Abdullahi, candidate for the Wadani National Party, captured nearly 64% of the vote. Experts say the spread of a mosquito in East Africa that thrives in urban areas and is immune to insecticide is fueling a surge in malaria that could reverse decades of progress against the disease. Africa accounted for about 95% of the 249 million malaria cases and 608,000 deaths worldwide in 2022, according to the most recent data from the World Health Organization. And Nigerians are celebrating the success of Chidinma Adesina at the recent Miss Universe contest in Mexico. Adesina fell just short of the title on Saturday, was named first runner-up, but was still crowned Miss Universe Africa and Oceania. Adesina won support from millions of Nigerians after a citizenship dispute forced her to step down from the Miss Universe South Africa race in early August. Adesina was born to a Nigerian father and a South African mother with Mozambican roots. She said she was concerned for her safety and the well-being of her family after she was targeted in xenophobic online attacks. It's time for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with news on an Ebola vaccination campaign. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther. Hello, everyone. Authorities in Sierra Leone are launching an Ebola vaccination campaign targeting at least 5,000 health workers. Many health workers caught the Ebola virus during the outbreak that hit West Africa a decade ago. Victoria Amunga reports from Kenema, Sierra Leone.
The name of dozens of healthcare workers who died in the 2014 Ebola outbreak. The names are displayed outside a hospital in Kenema, one of the worst hit cities during the 2-year outbreak that killed nearly 4,000 people in Sierra Leone. Mohammed Feika, a healthcare worker here, recalls how many of his co-workers died after contracting Ebola while caring for patients.
That greatly affected me, looking at some social activity as well. You as well, let me just ignore myself. Let me look at other people.
Now there's an Ebola vaccination campaign to protect healthcare workers like Feika. The Gavi Vaccine Alliance in June launched a preventive Ebola vaccination program to help contain the disease and protect critical healthcare and frontline workers in high-risk countries like Sierra Leone.
There was that kind of fear among healthcare workers, even among the entire population. So upon taking the vaccine, I now have the confidence that maybe when there is an outbreak, I will not be infected.
The single-dose vaccine is being provided to healthcare workers in countries that have had Ebola cases and those that border countries that have experienced Ebola outbreaks.
It's going to be 20,000 vaccines to start with, and we feel this is sufficient to cover the frontline workers I've just mentioned and protect those that are most vulnerable. And then, of course, we will be replenishing the stockpile so that we still have that 500,000 and then moving to other countries that are at risk of high risk of Ebola outbreaks.
The Ebola virus is spread through contact with the bodily fluids of an infected person. The average fatality rate for Ebola is about 60%, according to Gavi. Since Sierra Leone is considered a high-risk area, the government has set up a public health agency to enhance detection of the disease and prevent further outbreaks.
We know we are in an endemic zone. We know it's only the matter of when and not if that will be an outbreak. Every week we have a suspected case that we have to respond to. So a dedicated agency has been created to just look at that, preparedness and response.
As part of the campaign, community and religious leaders are encouraging the public to accept the shots. The Reverend Usman Fona is one such leader.
We use the pulpit. The mosques use the mimbar. The churches use the pulpit on Sundays and on Fridays, at weekday meetings, also at naming ceremonies. When we go to name children, we'll let the congregation that are present to know the value of vaccination.
More than 11,000 people died during the Ebola outbreak in West Africa between 2014 and 2016, most of them in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea. Authorities hope the Ebola vaccination campaign will help avert such a disaster in the future. Victoria Amunga, VOA News, Kenema, Sierra Leone.
The West Africa Ebola outbreak of 2014 in Liberia claimed nearly 5,000 lives and exposed severe weaknesses in the country's healthcare system. Observers say the country was unprepared to face such a public health crisis, especially after 14 years of civil war. I spoke with Dr. Maxo Luma, Executive Director of Partners in Health, Liberia, who shared his insights with me on the lessons learned from the Ebola outbreak and the ongoing efforts to strengthen public health infrastructure in the country.
When Ebola broke out in Liberia in 2014, Partners in Health was invited by the government of Liberia to join their response. From 2014 all the way to 2015, there was a lot of focus around the response. But we, as an organization, it was very obvious to us. As we got there, we realized that was a system, hit by 14 years, of civil war, where most of the healthcare workers who were working in the system either died or had to leave the country.
Can you share some insights to the strategy that the organization adopted?
Everywhere we work around the world, in the 11 countries we work around the world, more than 95% of all our staff are always hired from the community. So when we say from the community, they can be TB survivors, they can be Ebola survivors, they can be anything, because we live with the communities, we serve, we break bread with them, we stay with them, so it is a part of our DNA.
How did the strategy evolve after Ebola?
after Ebola, and when Liberia declared, Ebola free in 2016, all the focus was around health system strengthening. And Partners in Health made that call to stay, to work alongside the government of Liberia and the Ministry of Health, more specifically, to rebuild the system. And how did we do that? We know that you cannot strengthen any system without strengthening the people working in the system. And as part of our strategy, we've invested in what we call the 5 S's. The first S is staffing, in quality, in quantity, in order to provide safe and quality care for folks. The stuff can be all the equipment, all the diagnosis tools you need to work in the system, in the healthcare system. We invest in social support because we tend to work in, the most impoverished communities where, for example, in Liberia, folks are living when they are less than $1 per day. They're willing to accompany them and make sure they succeed for any, disease or thing they are dealing with. We want to make sure we address some of the social determinants of special diseases they are dealing with. We invest in dignified space to provide quality and respectful and dignified care to people, and we invest in system to build the capacity of the people living in the country, because we strongly believe investing in what we call the human local capital is the way to go, because we strongly believe it is the responsibility of the locals and to work alongside the government to make sure basic primary health care, are available for everyone. And therefore, we partner with academic institutions, including Harvard, Brigham and Women's Hospital, the local universities, nursing school, midwifery school, to build the health workforce with local librarians to ensure we have a system that is strong and stable enough and resilient enough to respond to future public health events.
That was Dr. Maxwell Luma. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on X at Linor Mudu. Esther, back to you.
Thanks, Lino. Be sure to watch Lino Mudu's health reports every Tuesday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at viewafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.